Greetings and welcome to the Metamorphosis Show. It is an exceptionally loud day here in Venice Beach, a very loud Columbus Day. So I hope that isn't too much of a hindrance. Please let me know if the audio is working properly and I will get going. Oh wow, the place is just live today. Okay, I'm just gonna get started, and if it becomes too much of a hassle, I'm sure you'll let me know about it. So first I wanted to talk about, I got a bunch of questions about cold water therapy. And so briefly, I became aware of that in about 2008 when I was practicing or training in powerlifting more, and I read a post by a guy named Vincent DiZenzo about contrast showers, and he was doing hot and cold therapy in order to recover faster. And so I played around with it, and had moderately good results, but nothing that was so powerful that I was like, oh, I need to do this all the time. Fast forward to a few years later, when I started reading about Wim Hof. Now, if you don't know who Wim Hof is, I encourage you to check this guy out. He's got something like 22 Guinness World Records. He attempted to summit Everest in just a pair of shorts, and I believe he got trapped at 22,000 feet because he had some, not trapped, he just stopped at 22,000 feet because he had a recurring foot injury. He ran a marathon in the Namib Desert with no water. In any case, he's able to bypass his autonomic nervous system just by virtue of his breathing techniques and his cold water therapy. And perhaps he is a genetic anomaly, but there are plenty of people that have been getting huge benefits from cold water therapy, which he has, drawn a lot of attention to. So I started messing around with it a little bit, and sorry, there's just a massive helicopter passing by right now. I started playing around with it inadvertently by getting into the ocean on a regular basis and surfing without a wetsuit when maybe a wetsuit was warranted. And I noticed that I stayed leaner. I had a good mood throughout the day. I slept really well, and I recovered fast. And as I started looking into the science, there's just a lot of good data backing that up. People have been doing ice baths in, I would say, all the major, United States sports, football, baseball, and basketball for decades, So the cold water therapy, the way I practice it now, is completely based on well, it's the Bijaya guys. I got to mention them. Jared Tavasolian and Chris Ty Melodista. I went to a Wim Hof seminar that they did in Malibu recently and learned the specific way that I do the cold water therapy now, which is, after you get cold, it's imperative that you warm up, because if you have low body fat or you're just prone to being cold, it stays with you a really long time and it's super uncomfortable. I mean, it would take me like half the day to warm up after I'd done, the cold water therapy in the morning. Yes, the merciless but righteous teacher. Jason, thanks for saying that. So now I make sure that I finish with the heat, and you should too. And I learn from guys that know better and take it from Wim himself. Sorry, Jason, I'm reading this right now. If you feel sick or cold, do you hold off the cold showers? Actually, I don't, unless I'm really, really sick. I do them almost every day, even with mild sickness. But honestly, I just don't get sick that much anymore. And I don't know if that's attributed completely to the dietary change or the way I exercise or the sleep that I get or the cold water therapy. I'm sure it's a bunch of those things together. But I just want to briefly go over the stuff that cold water therapy may do for you. I'm sure you can hear that plane. It's just like devastatingly loud to me. these are the reasons why I do it, and there are a ton, but first of all, it wakes me up better than any stimulant. And I still like my, medium chain triglyceride coffee, which I talked a little bit about before, but nothing will wake you up like the cold. And I think you probably know that, but it's all you have to do is turn that water to cold in the morning to be reminded. And again, I always finish with hot, so it's not that big of a deal. It may improve circulation and give your immune function a boost. I say may because I don't know, and I hate to say things across the board, will do this for you or will do that. I like to think they will, and anecdotally and empirically, for the most part, they have. But I don't know, and you don't know until you try it. So that's why it's important that you do. It may activate brown fat, which is the good stuff. That's what burns calories and burns the white stuff, the white fat. The longer you are in cold water, the longer period of time you do it consistently, the theory is that you're activating more brown fat and creating more of it, which helps you burn body fat at rest and warms your body. The next one is that it may reduce inflammation. Certainly that's the case for me. I recently ran 10 miles, which I don't run. And I know for you that actually run, 10 miles is nothing. For the ultra marathon people, it's not even, they're probably still sleeping through the first 10 miles. But I recently ran 10 miles after taking some exogenous ketones, which I'll talk about at a different time. That is a real product, Ketocana. Oh man. So to truncate that story, I don't typically run. I took these exogenous ketones, I ran 10 miles, and by the time I got back, my body was just hamburger, like my knees hurt, my feet hurt, my hips hurt, and that's because I'm not adapted to that sort of endurance work or that impact. Took an ice bath, and the next day, zero soreness. So I think coupled with the cold water showers that I do regularly and then the occasional ice bath, you'd be just shocked at how fast you recover, how little soreness you have, and how quickly you're ready to go again. So finally, it may be a potent antidepressant. There's a lot of good work done on cold for, people that deal with depression on and off. And if you're one of those people, it's something really easy that you can do. It's no drugs. You don't have to mess with pharmaceuticals, and you can control it. And every time you start to feel those symptoms coming on, or the things that you uniquely have associated with your particular brand of depression, just try it. It doesn't cost anything to jump in the cold water and see what it does to your mood. It instantly changes my mood. That and physical exercise are the only two things, short of ingesting something, that will instantly change my mood. And that's a great tool for that. But and I'm going to wrap this up with the cold water therapy. The reason why I practice it and have other people do it, the number one reason, is because I'm able to build courage and discipline every day. So every time I am jumping in the shower against my will, I'd rather not be getting into cold water first thing in the morning, if I want to stay completely comfortable. But if I must, then I know that I'm getting over on my own brain every single time. And that's a big deal to me. So if you struggle with discipline, like I have in the past, this is a great way to start to get a handle on that, to start to build it, start to build that courage. And it's relatively inexpensive. Kind of a big deal. So next I want to talk a little bit about meditation. And man, meditation, everyone knows at this point, or it seems like we all know, that it's a really good idea. We know that a lot of smart people meditate. We know that it's been around for thousands of years. The data is just coming in showing how much of your brain, the frontal cortex, is actually activated. We know that it controls stress levels, anxiety, and that's kind of a big deal, particularly because now most people are dealing with 10 to 12 hours a day of screen time. So you're dealing with the virtual scream in the form of ones and zeros all day long. And it's a giant sale, and it's a giant manipulation. And your head is pulled in the direction of everyone who's trying to either convince you of something or sell you something. And that's a little bit troubling, because I think for probably hundreds of thousands of years that wasn't the case, and the manipulation wasn't as poignant. It wasn't as acute as it is now. So that being said, I think it's really, really important to take that time every single day to just let your mind rest. You know, we have the screen time, then we also have like high stress and bad sleep and uneven diets, and you have people that are completely dominated by their own minds. And so meditation has been one of those things, one of those really just tremendous tools that you're able to use at any time when the overwhelm is extreme. And you can just sit still, and again, the change in your demeanor, in your stress, in your heart rate, all these things are pretty immediate. So the way that I was told was to begin with, just 5 minutes, because everybody can find 5 minutes, or at least should be able to. And that's a good place to start. And it's kind of what I prescribe now. I think you should bake it into the end of your training routine, because it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to exercise, or yoga, or surf, in fact, it's pretty much baked into yoga practices. The entire practice of yoga could be considered a meditation. And you could say the same for a lot of things, but I think it's a little bit different. I've heard people go like, oh, well, my meditation is going to the gym. I don't know about that, because if you're getting amped up for a heavy lift or a squat, that's a little bit different from sitting still and letting your body completely relax. What do you think about that? Oh, Jason, good comment. The default mode network, releasing the monkey mind. Or at least that, yeah, that's the goal, right? I think it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that, everybody should go after every single day. So if you're actively, I've heard of walking meditations, and I guess I just personally haven't mastered that. Doing anything beyond walking seems like the opposite of a meditation, because you're still engaged and still focusing. Even in a flow state, it's not really a meditation the way that I understand it. Sitting still, is crucial, or laying, or however you're most comfortable. But just 5 minutes every single day is completely attainable, and that's why I recommend that. Now, the things that happen as you progress beyond 5 minutes, oh man, you get into some really spectacular colors. Not everyone does, but one of my experiences that I always think favorably upon is when I'm sitting still for long enough and the mind is quieted, the monkey mind, as Jason mentioned, is quieted long enough that I actually start to see all kinds of different colors. And now I've read that they're associated with chakras, and I don't really know enough about that to speak on it. But it's usually purple, and these swaths of color just start coming in that are so far out and so impressive. I want to be in that state forever. And that's pretty bizarre to me. That is almost like something that I've experienced before in a psychedelic state. It's really, really profound. But that's only usually happened after the 15-minute mark for me. Between 15 and 20 minutes is when the really good stuff starts. So, that's what you ultimately want to get to. And then I think the stuff that's really impressive in that realm is a Vipassana meditation, which my friend Ashley Platts wrote about on the Go Polymath website that I keep. This is, I guess it varies in the amount of time. She did a 10-day, I believe. You don't speak to anybody and you just meditate all day long. And it's a lot of work. And I think most people describe it as some of the most challenging stuff they've ever done. And that should say it all right there. So if you can't be by yourself for 5 minutes a day, imagine what that would be like for hours and hours and days. And I think that just starts to give people an idea of really how little time they spend focusing on themselves. And there's a lot to be gained from that. And if you do ignore that, I think, well, I guess ignorance is bliss in a lot of ways. But I think a lot of things will come up that you won't be able to see. You won't be able to see through your stress or your overwhelm or your anxiety, because you'll attribute it to things that aren't necessarily important. And that's why meditation is super crucial, in addition to all the other stuff we mentioned. So, what else do I want to say about that? I guess that sort of wraps it up. You need to be able to step out of the chaos anytime you choose, and meditation is probably the easiest way to do that. So third is the plant-based lunch. And so the thing with the plant-based lunch is that it was just a theory for a long time. I'm going to be super honest. I just started to think about how sick people are in the world now based on the current diet that we follow. How much water is actually appropriated for big agriculture, particularly the cattle industry, which I'm not trying to denigrate in any way by suggesting a plant-based lunch. And really it was just based on the way I felt after the midday meal, which was terrible. I always wanted to go to sleep, and I know that that's the way it is for a lot of you too. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if everyone just substituted one meal per day for a plant-based meal? Wouldn't that solve a bunch of these problems? Wouldn't that really acutely address each of those components? And so I thought, yeah, it should in theory, but then I started practicing it. And now I subscribe to it, and I proscribe it. I think it is, it's the single big, I mean, this is gonna sound bananas, but I think it's the single most important dietary change that I've ever made. I stay leaner, I have better energy, I'm sure that I'm healthier. I feel that way. Actually, I'm not sure, right? I guess I'd have to do a bunch of blood work and look at all the markers and the metrics, but I just don't see how eating more vegetables and eating less meat, or at least not 3 times a day. Like, if you can give me a good justification for eating meat 3 or more times per day without trying to grow, I would love to hear it, because I've said it tons of times, I'm a huge fan of physique transformation, modifications. I love bodybuilding, powerlifting, strength sports. And if you're trying to put on a bunch of lean tissue very quickly, it makes sense. I get it. You need lots of protein, and a really easy way to do that is with animal products and meat. But if you're not, and you just want to feel good more often, I'm just waiting for a really good refutation of that. You know, if you're not trying to put on a bunch of muscle, I don't see why you need to eat meat 3 times a day. But I would love to hear back from you on that one. So people started eating these plant-based meals, and all of a sudden they started feeling great in the afternoon. They didn't feel like they needed to immediately take a nap. And I thought, okay, well, that's good. But also, they just started feeling better all the time. They had more energy, and it's just a hunch of mine until I can actually get some real data on it, but I'm sure that that means improved cognitive function, because if you don't have a bunch of blood in your stomach trying to break down really dense tissues, it seems like you'd have more for your brain to do good work, to do good thought work. And again, I don't know. It just seems like that makes sense to me. So as far as my impact on, you know, the world because of water usage, I just think it's a numbers game. You know, if I'm eating 365 days fewer of meat, that means my contribution to the water suck via the beef industry and all other big meat agricultural industries is less. And I know it's a tiny thing, but can you imagine if everyone decided to eat a plant-based lunch? I think we would see a huge impact immediately. And again, I just can't. Jason, if you're the only one paying attention, can you tell me why? Do you have any other devil's advocate positions on why that might not be the wisest thing? Why would you choose to eat a meat-based lunch? I don't know if you're still paying attention. So that was it. And, you know, if you can manage to get your stuff from a really good source, from a local farmer. In fact, here's my challenge to you. I'm just going to wrap up the plant-based lunch piece with this. If you decide to give it a shot, I would love to hear about how it goes. Just plants and fats, and lots of fats in the middle of the day for the next week. Start today, and tell me how you feel. Tell me how you feel after each one, and tell me how you feel cumulatively by the end of the week. And I'm willing to bet a lot on the fact that you're going to feel fantastic. And if you don't, again, I definitely want to know about it. So lastly, I have about 8 minutes left because I'm trying to keep this at 30 minutes. I've always trained people with 30-minute sessions, and this may not apply specifically to someone who is trying to get better off their back in jiu-jitsu, or someone who's trying to improve their squat 1 rep max. Definitely is not going to help you if you are trying to get better at surfing. So there are a lot of specific niche things where you need to spend a lot of time practicing that skill. But I think one of the hugest, well, at least one of the biggest excuses I hear on a regular basis as to why people can't be in shape is that it takes too much time. And I've always been a proponent of the 30-minute training sessions for people that use that excuse, because 30 minutes is not too long, and you can get a tremendous training session in that much time or less if you're doing the right stuff. So today I'm going to kind of lay out for you in the last few minutes here exactly how I do it, how I train people and have for almost 15 years now. Man, that's a long time. So it really involves 5 things and 5 core movements. A hip dominant or squat based movement, vertical and horizontal pulling, vertical and horizontal pushing, single leg movements or unilateral movements, and an abdominal movement. And so if you get these 5 movements in every session, you're effectively training the whole body from your posterior chain all the way up and the entire front of your body. You're just dominating your core. I hate to use that word, but you are. And you're able to recover from it because it's only 30 minutes so that you can do it multiple times per week. Now, the same can't be said for full body workouts where you're really going after it. And again, when you're doing specific stuff like trying to improve in the weight room by leaps and bounds or exponentially, this isn't necessarily for you. But if you're just trying to be healthier, if you're trying to make your body work better, it's a really good way to do it with very little in the way of excuses. It's hard to skip when it only takes 20 minutes. And the way that I do it, I do a 5-minute warm-up and a 5-minute meditation at the end. So really, it's only 20 minutes. It's a 20-minute session. And man, I just don't see how you can make excuses when that's the case. So you're doing 20 minutes of extremely focused training. You're doing 5 different movements, 5 different ranges of motion, and you're trying to do each of those movements 3 times. So the way that you want to build your progressions is completely up to you, but I like to work on something that can honestly be progressed upon, because if you can't progress on it, it becomes frustrating very quickly, and you'll abandon it. So with the 30-minute session, Oh, the other thing I need to mention is that I'm not an advocate of days off. Um, I just, especially, especially if you're doing 30-minute sessions. So why do you need to take an entire day off? And a day off should probably never really mean without any activity. You could still go walk. You could still swim. You could still do low impact stuff. I think there's far too much made of, and this is, I'm the recovery guy. I'm like, do cold water therapy, do ice baths, sleep, but don't be completely inactive. I just don't see a good reason for that. Maybe if you dominate your legs with, 20 sets of, squats for 50 repetitions, or you do something absolutely insane, yeah, I mean, you can take the day off, but still, there's no reason not to walk. That improved circulation is actually going to help you recover faster. Anything else I should say about 30-minute training? Well, with regards to those exercises, it took me a long time to figure out that that's what each 30-minute session needed to be made up of. Man, that was a lot of trial and error. And the reason why it works that way is because you can jump from that sequence relatively smoothly while recovering at the same time. So if you start with a goblet squat, for instance, or an overhead squat, the next thing you're going to do is a pushing movement or a pulling movement. And so then your lower body's resting and you're working on a pulling, and then you're going to push or pull depending on what you just did. And so now the antagonistic muscles are resting, and then you go back to a leg movement. And so your upper body, is relaxing, and now you're working on a single leg to work out the imbalances, because most people have some asymmetry there. And then you finish with an abdominal movement, which, some people don't like to mix abdominal movements and leg movements because you're ending up using your midsection in both those, but I haven't found it to be really that much of an issue until you're up in the upper reaches of, squatting over 315, and you want to make sure that you're getting as much strength as you can out of it. If you're, again, in a less specific, more health-oriented training regimen, which isn't about having giant muscles or putting up giant numbers in the gym, this shouldn't be an issue. So about 2 minutes left, and I just want to say thank you. It looks like Jason Abbott, you're the only person on this feed. I don't know, I can't tell because I haven't really gone in, but if you have any questions, if you're seeing this after the actual live, I'll answer all the questions. I'll take some time to get to all those. And if any of this is intriguing to you and you'd like to learn more about this programming and the synergy of it all together, definitely check out www.30minuteadvantage.com, and you can use this coupon. The coupon code is CHANGE, C-H-A-N-G-E, for substantial savings off of the price. So it's www.30minuteadvantage.com. Enroll in the course, and if you use the coupon code CHANGE, you will enjoy a substantial savings off the normal price. And again, that's a 4-week metamorphosis program. It's an absolute transformation, and it's all the things that we've talked about over the last 30 minutes. So thank you for watching. You have so much power. Use it wisely.